This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
What is going on, and welcome to Take on the World Lockup, where we take a deep dive into the famous, infamous, and bizarre prisons around the world. In this episode, we're going to take a trip to São Paulo, Brazil, to the Carandiru Penitentiary, São Paulo. It was also known as Casa de Detenção de São Paulo, or House of Detention. It was one of the largest prisons in Latin America and gained international notoriety for its violent and poor conditions. Carandiru Penitentiary was built in 1920. However, it was not occupied until 1956. While it was considered a state-of-the-art prison in 1920, it was badly outdated by the time the first inmates were brought in. It was originally designed to house 3,500 to 4,000 inmates. The prison quickly became overcrowded, with inmate populations reaching well over 8,000 at its peak. The prison was several cell blocks arranged in a radial outline, with a central tower serving as a security post. Each cell block had multiple floors, and the cells were considered small and cramped, often accommodating more prisoners than their intended capacity. With the overcrowding, feeding of the prison population became increasingly difficult. Insufficient food supplies and inadequate meal provisions became a real problem. Nutritional needs could not be met for many of the inmates at the prison. This is an ongoing theme with Latin America prisons. As a result, it became common practice for families to bring food in during visitation hours to supplement the meager prison meals. Families would bring in homemade meals, groceries, or other food items to ensure that their loved ones had enough to eat. It also emphasized the socioeconomic disparities and a heavy burden placed on families to support their incarcerated relatives. This made it especially hard for Americans locked up in Central and Latin America prisons, as they had no family in the immediate area to bring them food. Carandiru Penitentiary was notorious for high levels of violence and gang activity. Various criminal organizations operated within the prison, leading to frequent conflicts and riots. Gang leaders exerted significant control over the inmate population, and violent incidents, including stabbings and murders, were common. The penitentiary was known for the presence of several powerful and influential gangs that operated within its walls. These gangs exerted significant control over the inmate population and contributed to high levels of violence, organized criminal activity within the prison. Some of the prominent gangs that operated in Carandiru Penitentiary included Primeiro Comando de Capital, the PCC. The PCC was one of the largest and most powerful criminal organizations in Brazil. It originated in São Paulo's prisons in the 1990s. The Carandiru Penitentiary was one of its main strongholds. The PCC controlled various aspects of prison life, including drug trafficking, extortion, and maintaining its own code of conduct within the prison. The CV, or Comando Vermelho, which translates to Red Command, is another significant criminal organization in Brazil. Originally established in Rio de Janeiro, the CV expanded its influence to other parts of the country, including Carandiru Penitentiary. The CV engaged in drug trafficking, territorial disputes, and other criminal activity within the prison. The TC, or Terceiro Commando, or Third Command, was a criminal group primarily active in the state of Rio de Janeiro. However, it also had presence in Carandiru Penitentiary. The TC often clashed with the PCC and the CV, leading to violent confrontations and power struggles within the prison. These gangs, along with smaller local factions and organized crime groups, created a highly volatile and dangerous environment within Carandiru Penitentiary. Their activity often resulted in conflicts, riots, and violence, further contributing to the prison's infamous reputation. The most significant event in Carandiru Penitentiary's history occurred on October 2nd, 1992, commonly referred to as Carandiru's Massacre. The riot was triggered by a dispute between two rival gangs, the PCC and the CV, within Pavilhão 9 or Pavilion or Block 9. The conflict escalated, resulting in a full-scale riot. The prison authorities called upon a Special Operations Group, GEO, an elite police unit, to regain control of the situation. The GEO entered the prison armed with rifles, shotguns, and non-lethal weapons. Once inside Pavilio 9, the GEO encountered a chaotic and violent scene. Conflicts erupted between inmates and the police, with inmates armed with improvised weapons. The GOE resorted to using lethal force, firing live ammunition at prisoners. The Carandiru massacre resulted in the deaths of 111 inmates. The majority of fatalities occurred within the aftermath of the initial confrontation, as the GOE moved through the cell blocks to quell the uprising. Many inmates were shot at close range or executed in their cells. The deaths of 102 prisoners can be attributed to the police. 9 prisoners were allegedly killed by other prisoners. The massacre sparked significant controversy and outrage, both nationally and internationally. The use of lethal force by police drew criticism, with allegations of excessive violence, human rights violations. The incident brought attention to the poor conditions and overcrowding in the Brazilian prisons. Over the following years, legal proceedings were conducted to hold those responsible accountable for the massacre. In 2001, 74 police officers involved in the operation were charged with murder. There's conflicting reports and information on what happened to those 74. One report says in 2013, all of them were acquitted due to lack of evidence, conflicting testimonies. However, other research shows the trial was split into 4 stages, each dealing with a different floor of the prison. In April 2013, 23 officers were found guilty of killing 13 prisoners on the first floor. Their sentences were 156 years each. In August, another 25 police were given 264 years each for the deaths of 52 inmates on the second floor. 2014, 10 riot police were found guilty of shooting dead 8 inmates and were sentenced to more than 90 years. The severity of the sentences reflects the shock Brazilian public felt when the news of the killing spread. However, the length of the jail terms are largely symbolic, as no one in Brazil serves more than 30 years in prison. The officer who led the police operation, Colonel Ubitran Guimarães, was convicted in 2001 of using excessive force, but was later acquitted on appeal. The Carandiru massacre remains one of the deadliest incidents in the history of Brazilian penitentiary system. It highlighted systemic issues within the prison, including overcrowding, violence, and the need for significant reforms to improve conditions and respect human rights. In 2002, after years of criticism and legal battles regarding the prison's conditions and human rights abuses, Carandiru Penitentiary was officially closed. The decision to close the prison came as part of a larger effort to reform the Brazilian penitentiary system. Subsequently, the complex was demolished in 2002, and the area where it once stood is now a public park. Only one prison block was spared from destruction and now stands as a museum, highlighting the conditions endured at the prison. The history of Carandiru Penitentiary stands as a stark reminder of all the challenges faced by Brazil's prison system, including overcrowding, violence, and inadequate conditions. An effort continues to reform the system and improve treatment of prisoners across the country of Brazil. I hope you like this. If you did, comment below and let me know what prison you'd like me to do next. While you're down there, hit the thumbs up and maybe consider subscribing. Take on the World gives a large variety of content. There'll be something there for everyone. We took on Carandiru's Penitentiary. Now you go take on the world, but don't get locked up doing it.
This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
What is going on, and welcome to Take on the World Lockup, where we take a deep dive into the famous, infamous, and bizarre prisons around the world.